said, tonight we're going to be covering a few things in a PowerPoint, and then probably the most interesting part will be the live demonstration, but we do just want to set the scene, I guess, before we get started. So we'll be covering off on the role of the Integrity Systems Company and the importance of the actual red meat integrity system, what NLIS means on farm, and the key sort of things that are a part of NLIS, which is property identification codes, the animal or livestock identification, and the recording of your livestock transfers in the database. So just before we kick off talking about Integrity Systems Company, we're just going to set the overall picture of the industry and where do we sit. We are a service provider company, and we sit in that bottom row of organisations. So we're a subsidiary, a fully owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia. And along with those other two organisations in the bottom row, we are one of the service providers to industry. So the top row, or the top two rows, so we've got the Red Meat Advisory Council at the very top, and then we've got the peak industry bodies below that, and they are the ones responsible for advocacy and policy. And then, yeah, the companies or the organisations in the below row are the ones that need to go out and get those things delivered. So just to refresh about MLA, our Meat and Livestock Australia, they do have a very specific role that they need to play, and that covers research, development and adoption of improved practices, and also the marketing of Australian red meat. And to achieve these things, they do need to collaborate with the Australian government and the wider red meat industry. So all of those organisations that we just saw on the previous slide, they all, and with the Australian government and also the state departments, we all need to work together to be able to provide the things that need to be delivered. And the funding, the levy funding that comes in through to Meat and Livestock Australia must deliver outcomes that result in increased producer profitability, increased sustainability, and improve the global competitiveness of our industry. So we, as I've said, are a subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia. So we get our direction from them, and we have also a very specific mandate of things that we have to deliver. So and they are summarised on this slide of what we're trying to make sure happens. So our role is to manage and deliver the Australian red meat integrity system, and that to ensure that Australian red meat is safe to eat and fully traceable. And that is by providing that on-farm assurance and animal identification and lifetime traceability. And it's these things that combining together that do actually underpin our Australian livestock selling system and gives that confidence to our buyers, retailers and consumers. And that's really important because our industry is a pretty big one. It's worth a lot of money to the Australian economy, 28 billion annually. And probably just, just as important is the fact that it supports so many people. So there's 400,000 jobs that the industry is supporting and around 80,000 businesses. So it's a really important part of the economy. It's a really important part of, rural Australia. And it sends product into over 100 global markets. So before we launch into traceability, we're just going to remind you that traceability is one part of the system, and it needs to link through together to the on-farm assurance. So the two programs together, LPA and NLIS, work together to ensure that we've got food safety and traceability. So LPA, livestock production assurance, is all about on-farm assurance, managing food safety, animal welfare and biosecurity. And it's basically the tick of assurance for your product from producer to consumer. And it demonstrates the professionalism of the industry and underpins market access for Australian red meat. NLIS, what we'll be discussing tonight, is all about identification and traceability and tracking the location of all livestock. It's mandatory for producers and endorsed by major producer groups, feedlots, agents, sale yards and processor bodies. And it's underpinned by state and territory legislation and enhances Australia's ability to track livestock during disease and food safety incidents. The central component to these two programs are property identification codes, and we will have a look at this, the specifics of PICs in the next few slides. But also they are linked together. LPA and NLIS are linked together through your records that you keep for the two programs, and really tightly linked together through LPA NVDs, because that's where your on-farm assurance and traceability are joined. So all of this is vital when it comes to the records that you as red meat producers keep, because both LPA and NLIS need to work together to underpin the red meat integrity system. So now we've given a quick refresher about the various elements that make up the red meat integrity system, and we're going to get in some more detail around NLIS.
So just before we do, Jo, I'm just going to remind everyone that the Q&A button down the bottom, don't wait until the end to put your questions in. Pop them in there as soon as they come to mind, and the team can answer them as we go through. So over to you, Jo, into NLIS.
Thanks, Dee. So I've got a sort of a map of the two programs, I guess. It's the integrated diagram, we like to call it. And it sort of maps out the requirements for producers or livestock producers incorporating those two programs. And like I just said, LPA and NLIS, or on-farm assurance and iTraceability, are linked through PICs, through NVDs, and through the record keeping. So all of those obligations or functions down the right-hand side are what we'll be talking about tonight. And it's just another reminder that the system is all connected. So on-farm, NLIS comes together with three sort of elements, I guess. So you have all physical locations need to be identified, and I guess that's not just your farms, that's every physical location where livestock can be transferred to. So sale yards, processors, live export facilities, showgrounds, all those, every place needs to have a PIC. And all livestock must be identified with a NLIS device, which can either be a visual or electronic device. And those two things then must be linked together when transfers occur. So all transfers must involve the devices and the PICs. So now we're going to talk about your role in managing these elements on your farm. So as we said, a PIC, or a property identification code, is the central identifier for location, and it's an 8-character code allocated by your state or territory department. You must have a PIC to move livestock on and off a property, and it does form the basis of the whole program. PIC numbers rather than properties are the basis for the integrity system programs, and NLIS relies on PICs to ensure the traceability of animals through the supply chain. Your tags, or all NLIS tags or devices, are issued to a PIC, and they are applied to any livestock born there or livestock that have been moved there and then require a replacement tag because their original tag's been lost. And all transfers on the database must be between valid PICs. The other thing about PICs is that they can be assigned a status. So that's how the database sort of manages issues, or also you can identify PICs that are part of a particular program, such as PICs that are part of the EU program or the National Feedlot Accreditation System. That's just two examples of statuses, marketing statuses. And then obviously there's all kind of statuses related to food safety or those kind of incidents. The other thing to note is that there are differences between states and territories in how PICs are managed. So if you're wanting to find out about PIC numbers, or you want to amalgamate PICs or anything to do with PICs, you need to speak to your state authority, because they manage PICs specifically in your state, and that could be different to how they're managed in other states.
So Jo, just while we're on this this subject of PICs, so obviously being a state or territory department allocation, we might just ask a question of Andrea Nichols from DPICWI, the Registrar of Animal Brands. So Andrea, I think one of the common questions you get is about whether you can amalgamate PICs in Tasmania. So are you able to amalgamate PICs, and if so, how do producers go about doing this?
Yes, you can amalgamate PICs in Tasmania. Majority of the time they have to be in the same area and they have to be run as one entity. All you need to do is go onto our website and just print out the form and list all your PIC numbers. Just remember your main PIC number that you want should be something that you are holding on to for the longest. If you sell that property, you'll lose that PIC number and you'll need to go again and apply for another one if you wish to continue an amalgamation.
Great, thanks, Andrea. So we'll include a link to the DPIPWI website where you can get that information in the post-webinar email. So keep an eye out for that one. Thanks, Jo.
Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Andrea. So the second element of NLIS is the identification of the livestock. So all animals that are bought and sold and moved along the supply chain must be identified or tagged. Most of the time it's tagged with an NLIS accredited tagger device from the property of birth. And in most cases, this tag will remain with the animal for their entire life. It is an offence to remove an NLIS tag from an animal and apply another tag. And there are different tagging requirements for different species. So cattle must have an electronic RFID, and that might be the last time I say that because it's a bit of a tongue twister, or more commonly known as a EID device. And this can either be a single ear tag, which is probably the most common, well, it is the most common, or it can be a rumen bolus and a visual ear tag combination. Sheep and goats can only be identified by tags, so they don't have rumen boluses. And these can be either an EID or a visual tag, except in Victoria where they have moved across to EIDs only, and they've got a phasing in period. So if you wanted to know anything more specifically about that, it'd be the Victorian AgVic website would be the best place to check. For more information about NLIS accredited devices, you can visit the ISC website and find lists for the cattle, sheep and goats. So we've got lists of all the every type of accredited NLIS device that's available. And we can provide more information about this in the post webinar email. Just on our little integrity insight, which is at the bottom of that slide, just a reminder that there is of those different types of tags. So breeder tags, which are the tags that are assigned to animals when they're put into the ears of animals when they're on their pick of birth. For cattle, they're white, and for sheep and goats, they're the year of birth colour. And for post-breeder tags, they're the ones that are applied to animals if they're no longer on their pick of birth and they've lost their tag. They're orange for cattle and pink for sheep and goats. So there is those two types of tags, breeder and post-breeder. So applying NLIS devices to your livestock, and I just realised today we didn't have a dot point on this slide, but I'm just going to mention it about applying them correctly. So it is really important that you read the information about where exactly in the year they need to be applied and apply them in the correct position with the correct pliers. And it's also really good to make sure that your pliers are clean and disinfect them between tagging. But if a tag does fall out and the animal needs to be tagged with if a tag does fall out and they're no longer on their pick of birth, then they will need to be tagged with a post-breeder tag. So it's really important if you do trade in livestock that you do keep post-breeder tags on hand so that you can replace with the correct type of tag if one falls out. Oops. And I guess we really stress this, don't wait until you're sending livestock somewhere to realise that a tag's missing, you don't have the correct type of tag to re-tag. So it's really important to be prepared. And if you do end up sending livestock, especially to sale yards without a tag, in some circumstances, you can be charged for a replacement tag. Well, most sale yards do charge you for that replacement tag, and this can be quite expensive. So a lot more than what it would cost you to have replaced that tag at home. And our little integrity insight on this slide is that if you are having issues with tags, then the best thing to do in the first instance is contact your supplier. But we also do have device complaint forms on the ISC website. So I encourage you to download one of those and complete them and submit that to Integrity Systems Company. So as I said before, cattle must be identified with electronic tags, and sheep and goats can be, but they also can and in Victoria they must be, but everywhere else they can just have visual NLIS tags. These tags don't provide lifetime history on the database, obviously. I know sometimes people get a bit confused and think why those tags would be somewhere recorded, but they're not recorded individually on the database because they're not electronic, so they're not going to provide that lifetime history. I know it's not mandatory to apply a post-breeder tag if you've purchased in sheep or goats unless the original tag has fallen out, but traders do often do this if they're buying from quite a few different picks, so they'll add their post-breeder tag, and if the original tag is in, they leave that in, and so adding their post-breeder tag. Because the reason is because when you're completing the NBD, you have to record all the picks apart from your own that are on any of the devices in the mob. So if you apply your own tag, obviously then you only have to record your own pick on the NBD. Transfers of animals with visual tags are managed as mob-based movements on the NLIS database. So that's and they also include the NBD, and you can, it's if you want to upload the image, and we strongly encourage you to do so, of the NBD that was involved with that mob-based movement. But for the remainder of this webinar, we will be covering the use of EID devices. So apologies if you only have visual tags, but I encourage you to still watch, because there are many on-farm production advantages of using individual tags, and if this is something that you might be considering in the future, then it's going to be helpful to see how the EID part of NLIS works.
So Jo, just before we move on from visual tags, Andrew, we might ask a question of you in terms of, I guess, how do Tasmanian producers actually go about ordering their NLIS tags?
Well, first of all, they must be registered for tags, which is a separate process from getting a PIC number, because PIC numbers are used for several things in Tasmania. So as long as they make sure that they've signed a declaration and are registered for tags, they can go to any local rural agent store and order their tags, or they can go online and order their tags. There is a list on our website showing what companies are registered in Tasmania for tags.
Great, thank you. We will include that link as well in our post-webinar email to make it easy for everyone. Great, thanks, Jo.
Thank you. So just moving on. Now this slide, often when we've talked to people about this, they're unaware of this. So I just thought we'd include it, even though it's might look a little bit technical. It's actually pretty simple. So we're just talking about the fact that tags have two numbers. So there's the invisible number, or the radio frequency device number, so that the one that you have to read with a reader. And then there's the visual number, which is printed on the tag. So both numbers can be used to individually identify animals on your property. And when you're using the NLIS database, you'll see that the numbers can be either number can be used. We do stress caution if you don't have a reader and you are going to be using and reading and using the numbers, the visual numbers, because it is really easy to make a mistake, like just a human error mistake. Either you read it incorrectly, or you write it down and do the transfer incorrectly. So if you are just reading them and doing your transfers that way, please be really, really careful that you get the numbers, you read it and write it down correctly. But that visual number for both cattle and sheep does start with the pick of birth. So if your animals that you're bred, they're going to have your pick number as the first part of the number. The after the pick, the first letter then is the manufacturer, the code for the manufacturer. So X stands for Allflex, and there is we can provide a list of who all the manufacturers and what their codes are. The next letter tells you what type of device or tag that is. So B does stand for breeder for cattle tags, and in the sheep example, S stands for a sheep breeder tag. And then the next letter represents the year that tag was manufactured. And normally when you buy your tags, they're generally is the year that they were manufactured. So just knowing that can help you when you're looking at that big long list of device numbers in your NLIS database to actually start to identify, you know, when they might be from and what animals they might actually be in. So if you know what year you purchased them, and it's likely that you might have also used them that year, it sort of starts to give you a bit more of a clue. So just this example is from a while ago. So 2014, the letter was K. We're up to letter S for 2021. The really important thing that I wanted to make you aware of is that after that letter for the year, the next 5 characters, that can be customized. So you can choose what they are to a degree. So the first character or the first box after the year letter can be a letter, or you can just have 5 numbers. But when you order your NLIS tags, you can say, I'm ordering tags, I'd like these tags to start with this number. And then if you order them again next year, you can ask them to start from that number again. So for example, if you brand or mark 50 calves a year or lambs, you can order them to start from 1 to 50, or you might order an extra 10, so 1 to 60, and the next year you can start from 1 again, because it's going to be differentiated by this year letter. So that's why you can start from 1 again the next year. So if this is going to be helpful for you, you can actually start to customize the numbers that are on your NLIS tags, which can help you sort of identify what groups of animals they belong to. If you don't request it, and most people don't know about it, so they don't. So if the first time you order from a manufacturer, they just start at 1 and it'll just keep going up until, just keep going up in numbers as you continue to order from them. The other thing to know is that if you do actually want matching visual tags that do match that number, you need to order them at the same time as you order your NLIS tags, and they have to be from the same manufacturer. So you can't order, All Flex NLIS and then Z tag management tags. They all have to come from the same manufacturer. So that's just a couple of ways you can help identify the tags that you have. So just before we get into more about doing the transfers, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the value proposition, I suppose, for NLIS, and just because I think it's easy to take for granted that the potential that NLIS puts in the hands of producers, because it is a system that provides a nationally consistent way for information to be collected and used. And the value of using the NLIS database is that it gives you an opportunity to take control of that part of your business and keep track of the livestock movements. And if things go wrong, you do have that information at your disposal. It's important to be responsible for your business and your livestock, not only so that you are, you're ready if you get audited and you can show that you've been keeping a good track of your traceability, but it does provide more market opportunities for your business. So with having good records and good data and linking them through to carcass data, that is a way that you can start to really get some analytics on what you're producing and what's coming out as the finished product. And by linking that information through to programs like MSA and Livestock Data Link, and there's other programs out there using that information, you can really start to make some really good on-farm decisions to improve productivity and profitability. Linking all the attributes and information about individual animals to a number can provide powerful opportunities for using the data to accelerate production outcomes, because the more you can measure, the better you can manage. And it is only because of NLIS that you can receive individually identified carcass data back from the processors. And this linkage has allowed for the development of feedback systems like MSA and LDL, and it does provide that essential information for generating the estimated breeding values and genetic information around carcass traits. So really, even though at times you might think that the effort that you need to go to for NLIS, it really does have this powerful opportunity for utilising data. So it is important that you do manage your devices, and a few hints and tips about managing your devices on farm we'll go through. So as I just pointed out, then there are ways to link your NLIS devices, so they're not just like a big list of numbers that mean nothing, linking them through to management tags, so that this way they actually mean something to you. So when you look at the number, it relates to a certain class or group of animals. Another really useful way to make use of your make it easier to use NLIS on farm is to use some kind of software program. So if that's something that you're considering doing for other reasons on your farm, there's quite a few software programs that do help you manage your NLIS really well. If you don't have a software program and you don't want to go to that expense, then don't forget about those last 5 characters on the NLIS tags that you can then start to link to management tags. I mean, you can just hand write out management tags. You don't have to order the pre-printed ones, but it just starts to give you a way to manage those tags. And when we'll show you the demo of the website, we will show you how you can have a look at some reports that help you keep track of what's happening with your physical devices.
Hey Joe, while we're on that one, we might put a question to Andrea, if that's okay. So what's the recommendation in Tasmania if producers have tags that are not functioning? Andrea, what we should be doing about that?
We'd recommend that they actually get permission to remove the tag and replace it if they possibly can, and to also record it with you guys, so then it's registered, so if it's an ongoing issue, that it can be dealt with at a bigger level.
Okay, great. Thank you. Back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Dee. So before we even get to thinking about transferring devices, what does the database know about your pick? So your account will have a number of active devices assigned to you, and you can run a report called Active Devices on Pick Report, which we are going to have a look at to find out how many. And if you have never done a pick reconciliation, this list of devices could be very large, a lot more than you have livestock. Ideally, what the list should include is the devices you've purchased, which are still attached to livestock, or maybe the spare, and plus the spare ones in your cupboard, plus any devices in livestock that have been transferred on and are still on your property, less any devices in livestock that have been transferred off. That's the ideal situation. But in reality, the active devices on pick report will also likely include, well, it will include all devices that have fallen out in the paddock or that are in animals that have died and haven't been recovered. The devices for livestock that have left your property, but the transfer wasn't done. Devices that have been transferred to your pick by mistake and you didn't realise. And it could also include any devices that you inherited when you purchased the property, and the devices were actually still on the pick when you did that, even though you didn't purchase any livestock. And don't forget, any of these devices could also have a status assigned to them. So it's really important to know if this status is one of the ones that can affect your ability to sell livestock. So what the database knows about your pick can be really different to reality, and obviously in an animal disease or food safety incident, this is far from ideal, and it can compromise traceability claims around Australian red meat. So the only way to sort it out is to do a pick reconciliation, and if you're using some of that herd management software, you might be able to do that within the program. But if not, you will need to do a pick reconciliation manually, and we will discuss this manually as in on the NLIS database, and we'll discuss this later in the webinar. But apart from completing a pick reconciliation, the best thing you can do is check every single transfer on and off has been completed correctly. If you get an error, if you get a warning, investigate it and fix it up. And for bought in stock, if you're going to be selling or moving them, we recommend doing a beast inquiry on the devices before they leave your pick to make sure that they actually have been registered to your pick. So that's when that doesn't, that applies between properties to properties, but it doesn't apply when sale yards and processors take stock, because they will do the transfers. And I'm glad no one picked Auctions Plus or the online selling platforms, because a lot of people do think that they are responsible, but they are not. And it's fine to have your agent do your transfers. That's very common. But please remember to ask them for the upload ID, because that way you've got a record of the actual transfer that was completed. So if there's any errors, you've got that on record. And because it is your responsibility to ensure it's being completed. So even if your agent is completing your transfers, and that's fine, it's still a great idea to have an account and just hop in and double check that. So the reason why as well is because if you are selected for a LPA audit, they will be looking at the transfers of livestock on and checking them against your NBDs. So if you trade cat livestock, be really vigilant, because obviously the more you trade, the more transfers that are happening on your account, the more you need to be careful. So what happens when transfers go wrong? This is the most common transfer error, when a movement hasn't actually been recorded. So the movement of livestock from pick A to pick B was never recorded on the database. So when the livestock moved from pick B to pick C, the database says, hang on a second, we don't know that they're at pick B. We've got them over here at pick A. So the database doesn't stop the transfer from happening, which is really important, because if we had to fix up all the mistakes before you could do the transfer, or for the livestock you've transferred, it would slow things down very considerably. So it lets the transfer happen. It's called a System X transfer or a systems transfer. And basically the database says, we don't know where they've been between pick A and pick B, so we'll move them to a systems pick. You'll see it on your records as XXXXX. Might be a few more X's in there. And then it will say, well, they've gone somewhere unknown, and then we'll take them from that unknown pick and put them onto pick B. And then the transfer from pick B to pick C is fine, because they've got them onto pick B to be able to transfer them to pick C. So this is why it's really important to investigate and fix errors when you're notified. So if you get an email saying there's been an issue, that's what it's about. So in this example, every one of those picks would have received a warning email if they have an account, because you only get an email if you have an account. And if that transfer was done by an agent, the agent would also have received an email to say, look, something went wrong here. So yeah, it's really important to have an account so you know if these things are happening. And the other thing that happened to those livestock is they've lost their lifetime traceability. If you're selling into a market where lifetime traceability is important, then you've just lost some money on that sale. So very quickly, we're going to look at what's involved in setting up an NLIS account. The web address is there. You just go through the steps to register. They are free to open and operate, and all the instructions are on this slide. So we will be sending you copies of these slides after the webinar, so you can come back to this information if you do need some help. Important to note that once you've submitted your request to register, the request has to be approved by your state or territory department, and so they need to check that against their the pick register details to make sure that that pick is your pick, and that can take several days. So if you need an account in a hurry, make sure you allow some time for that to happen. Once you've been registered and they have set up the account, the NLIS team have set up the account, you'll receive a user ID, and importantly, that password that you used when you registered, you need that. You can log in at that web address, and then we highly recommend you then link your NLIS account to your MyMLA account, which you may need to create, and for easy access, because that's the account you can use to link all of your integrity system accounts. So LPA, MSA, LDL, all those accounts get linked through MyMLA. Then you only need one username and password. So I'm just trying to hurry up so that we've got plenty of time for the demonstration. So where the key actions on the database that most producers will do, well, the most important one is that they'll do the transfers, because we've just been talking about how important it is to make sure the transfers are completed. You can either do this by typing in the details, or you can upload a file, or you could do a mob-based movement if you've got sheep or goats. The other important thing that you should be doing is checking that your transfers have been completed, because as we said, sometimes there's errors, sometimes you get a warning email, so you need to check them. You may need to do a transfer correction. There's a whole range of reports that you can run, and then importantly, completing a PIC reconciliation, which is the only way to get your PIC details back to being close to what they should be. So we're going to swap over to George. He's going to run the practical demonstration, and he will cover logging in, checking your account details, accessing help, completing a transfer, checking that transfer has been completed, and recording that upload ID, and then running a few reports. So if you're right to swap screens, George.
Welcome everybody. So yeah, my name's George. I work in integrity systems and have been with NLIS for just over 20 years now. Done a fair few workshops down in Tasmania, so hopefully I can teach you a few little tricks. So this is the home page that Joe was just talking about. If you want to create a new account, click on register. I've already got mine, so I'll click on login. Enter in my user ID and your password. Login. And this is your home page. This is called the producer home page. And first thing we're going to go through is change button. So if you click on the change, it allows you to change your details, some of your details. Click on continue, and you can change your email address, your phone number, some of your details. It's very important to keep your email address updated. It's the most crucial part for us to contact you with. So we contact you for these sorts of events, and if anything goes wrong with the database as well. And then all the activities I can do. You can untick them if you don't want to do any, but we just leave them all ticked. The main purpose of coming into here is to change your phone number or your email address. Go back to home and you change your details. So it's very important that you change and keep your email updated. Can't emphasize that enough, because that's how we contact you for lots of reasons. So your details up to date, you can always see it on the screen. And there's a lot of help tools. So I click on this help button up here, and Joe and the team are working on more tools, a lot more videos. So these are all fairly old now. Well, some of these are quite old, 2013. You click on help, change your species if you've got sheep. These are the color ones, and there's a list of all the tech tips or user guides we've got to help you through the database. So there's a few of them. So we're going to be updating a lot of these, converting them into YouTube clips, little clips to make life a lot easier. This is the core part of the system. I'm working with cattle. You can change that to sheep, mobs, goats, leave it on cattle, as we've done most of the day. And then your activity, what do you want to do today? I want to, this is broken up into 3 areas. The first bit is just to change your livestock. So if you no longer have sheep, you click on this and you can remove your sheep. Don't deal with sheep anymore. Now it's gone. So the 2 main parts, or there's 3 parts: changing the details, notify the database of, and that's doing something. By doing, I mean you're actioning transfers, movements, taking tags off the database. And then there's a list of reports, just to look at. This is what we call the viewing option, and this is the doing option. So we break it up into 2 sections. Of course, and your poll show that it's your responsibility to transfer livestock onto your property. That's what we'll do first. So we'll look at transferring onto your property, and then we'll go through some reports. So the first one we'll do, we'll look at, is this livestock moved onto my property? If we go, This is your legislative requirement to notify the database when you move cattle onto your property through a private sale. So you're going to type in the details, or you can upload a file. We'll use this type in the details, which is the fastest and easiest way to do it, unless you've got software. You've got a scanner with built-in software, then it'll do it all for you. You click in type in the details. Excuse me. And here you type in the details, or you can just copy and paste. If you have a list, even from your reader, you can just copy and paste. So there's one tag number that I've copied, coming from the same. And as Joe pointed out, that's the outside number of the tag. And we know that QAZZ 7777, this is my pick, my test account, is the breeder of this animal, and that's where it's coming from. Go to my other property. I have a vendor deck number, and this animal arrived yesterday. It's pretty simple. Now, this copy and paste, you can put as many tags in there as possible. A couple of thousand will fit, but it's not ideal. Certainly 700 would have no problems whatsoever. Click continue. Now, to the last page before we change any data, this is your confirmation page saying, is this what you want to do? Do you want to move this one tag from here to here with this waybill number on this date? Pretty simple. Click send. It's now given you a receipt number or an upload number. So the file has gone through to the database. This is live, this is real. So you can keep a record of this. You can copy, write that number down. You will get an email. The email has been sent this email address. But to view, you click on view my transaction history. Now this is going to show you everything that we've done today. Being done in 2 days. We only need to see the last file we just uploaded. So everything we've done today. And there it is there, manual upload. That's the file we just did. And it's come up with a warning. Once what the warning is, we click on the warning, and it tells us that it was an EU eligible animal. So it gives us warnings straight away. So this device is not EU eligible, has been transferred to an EU pick. So you get a call from UCAS unless it's a breeding bull and you have a approval for it. So straight away, you see exactly what's happened. And there's a list of all the files that I've used today and status. The system is pretty quick. It handles it in a very short period of time. To have a look at all your warnings, you can click on home. And again, from here, you're looking for the reports because that's what you're looking. It's a view. You want to view all your notifications that you've received. And remember, if you've got your email address in there that's correct, you'll get all these notifications. There's a list of all the warnings, errors you've received. Just want to see what has not worked. So you want to see what the errors are. This is of the errors that I've received. You'll see the warnings. This is the last one we just did now. The time, 8:48. I click on that, it'll show us the same message as before. It's an important report to run, so you can go back and have a look at what you've done previously. That's the actioning, and they're all pretty similar. The livestock moved off or on. If you are moving them off, and your neighbour said, "I'll buy this off you," provided you do the uploads. Same system, same principle. Look at some reports now. Have you generated all reports? The first one we'll look at is livestock transferred onto PIC. So we're going to look at the property we just moved onto, QBZZ. And we say, give us everything that's moved on this year. Again, this is the viewing part only. And we have all these are sortable. There's a list of 6 tags or 6 animals that have been transferred onto my property of QB ZZ222 since the 30th of January till the 30th of August till today. If we sort lowest to highest, highest to lowest, that's the same tag that we just moved a few minutes ago. So pretty simple, and these things are sortable, and that's your basic report. You have 2 properties, you want to have a look on moved on the other property, nothing. Same as the date range. 1 animal. Again, this is my test account. As you can see, the reports are very quick, very easy to run. Active devices on reports. So this will give you a list of everything that database has been on your property. Another important report. You can then use this to say, well, there's 45 devices. How many do I have? As Joe alluded to earlier, you could buy the property. There could be tags left over. These are all sortable. All these fields are sortable. If you wanted this list included into your software system, if you click on export, you can just follow the guide. They're pop-ups, so they're probably hidden behind the window. So if you click on the export button down here, and you're able to select any one of these fields and save it on your computer. So there's all the list of reports you can run. So devices that you've purchased, animals that you've purchased. If you set tags to inactive, so if you have to do what they call a PIC reconciliation, where you've been told you've got too many tags on your system, or you've bought animals in that you haven't transferred and you get audited, the auditor will may ask you to do a reconciliation. They use all these reports to run your PIC reconciliation. That's a very quick and short summary. Play with the system. You can play with these reports. I showed you those reports about the devices on your property. So it doesn't take long to run these reports. They're pretty simple to run. Devices on your property, they're easy to run. You can't really break the system. This isn't very fast. It takes seconds to run. So have a play. Certainly play with the reports of cattle moved on, moved off, active devices, and use this help function. And the final statement, please make sure that your email address is up to date.
And as George was just talking about PIC reconciliations, that is, what is it in when you're just working out exactly what it's going to be done to create the PIC reconciliation. So it's a stock take of all the electronic NLIS devices on your property, and completing that PIC reconciliation will identify the discrepancy between the devices that you physically have, so the ones in the livestock and the ones that you have spare in your cupboard, and the list that the database thinks you have. Now, I would say don't leap in to do a PIC reconciliation until you have become familiar with using the database. It is an easy thing to do. Well, it's relatively easy to do, but without any sort of background knowledge or familiarity with using the database, it's not easy. So it's really important. A really important one of the new how-to guides that's been developed, and we do have a video that steps you through the process. So some brand new resources on helping people do the PIC reconciliation, because it is a really important thing to get done. And then if you check your transfers and check all your transfers from then on in, you're sort of almost guaranteed to keep things really ticking over. So just be those tags that fall out in the paddock that you need to account for. So just the little integrity insight down the bottom of that slide is that some people do find a bit confusing that all tags that you purchase are active from the minute that they're allocated to your pick. So all of the tags sitting in your cupboard waiting to be used are considered active. So the database doesn't distinguish between what's actually being used for livestock and what's waiting to be used. So yes, I would really, if you'd like to complete a pick reconciliation, I'd really encourage you to check out our new resources. So I'll just flip to that screen. The new how-to guides at the moment are available on the ISC website, but as we're building them up as we go, so we haven't replaced every one of those tech tips yet, but we've got about 10 of those most common things, and definitely the transferring, searching the pick register, which is really common, and the pick, completing a pick reconciliation. So I really encourage you to use them, and as we go along, we'll be able to start linking them through to the NLIS website as well. So when you click on those links on the website, you will be able to see them straight away rather than having to go to the ISC website. My web page, so this is an example of the new how-tos on the ISC website, which we'll give you a link to. So you work your way through the little questions. You're working with what type of livestock, what you need help with. So I might go to find a pick number, because searching the pick register is a really common activity that people need to do. And so instead of just a single PDF, now you have all this text on the screen. You can use these quick links to look at the how to in brief, like the quick simple steps. You've also got screenshots, and then if you want to watch a video, you can watch the video of how to do that. So that was a quick little visual of the new how-tos, but we do have a whole heap of information on both the ISC website, and that's and there's also quite a bit of information on the NLIS website. And of course, we have our monthly newsletter, The Integrity Matters, and we often have NLIS articles in there and some sort of practical ideas of things to do to manage your NLIS account. And we also put information across the normal social and digital channels. So if you're looking for more information, make sure that you are signed up for the newsletter and that you have liked us on Facebook and Twitter. And just... yeah, I've got to move that.
I do have one question for DPIPWE and one question for ISC. So, Andrea, we might come back to you if that's okay. Just one of the common questions that you get is about what producers need to do if they are moving or selling properties when it comes to PICs. So are you able to just enlighten us about what people need to be doing there?
Yeah, it's important if you're selling and if you're purchasing a property that you notify us when you've sold a property, so we can make you a previous owner or leaseholder of that property. If you know the PIC number, still do apply for the PIC, because it's not automatically transferred over, and there could be issues with the land that we need to look to make sure that you are applying for the correct PIC number. You've got two options. You can apply online on the PRAS website. That also allows you to go back in and update your details, like George was saying. Emails, very important to have that up to date. Enterprises, you can add properties there, or you can print out a form and send the form in to us, and we can register you that way.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. And last question of the evening is going to go to Kathleen Allen from ISC. So Kathleen, ISC often gets a lot of questions about the database and what your plans for it, and will it get an update soon, and all that kind of thing. So can you enlighten us as to ISC's plans for the future of the NLIS database?
Thanks, Dee, and thanks everyone for joining us. I feel like I'm doing a quick cameo right at the end. But yeah, good question. We do get a lot of feedback. The NLIS database probably isn't the most, I guess, amazing user experience, and we recognise that. We've certainly heard a lot of feedback over the years. It is a priority for us at ISC to refresh, and we have got a real focus on improving the user experience across the integrity products at the moment. We've got a real push around the NVD, so being able to do your national vendor decks digitally. But at the moment, as I said, yeah, improving the NLIS database is certainly on the list as part of our strategic plans. But in the meantime, we're there to support producers through the refresh of all our how-to guides that both Joe and George spoke about, and hosting webinars like this, working with our state counterparts. And of course, producers are always welcome to contact the help desk on the numbers there on the screen as well.